Kevin O'Reilly confirms a massive and significant Bitcoin price surge for the year 2025. We also see Switzerland, which has now launched a popular initiative and is laying the groundwork for the National Bank of the future to buy Bitcoin. That would be really crazy. And now the next step is being taken to buy massive Bitcoin positions in Switzerland. That's incredible. We also have the asset manager Franklin Templeton, who now assumes in his new report that in 2025 several nation-states will publish a Bitcoin reserve, thus massively accumulating Bitcoin here. And we also have warning words from Donald Trump, who is once again cautioning about a major depression, like what happened in 1929. It's really hot stuff that's going on here. First, we see that BlackRock has now sold Bitcoin for the 7th time. They actually sold 390 Bitcoin yesterday, not BlackRock itself, but BlackRock's clients, which is always received very negatively by the community because it's pretty rare for that to happen. But in fact, there has been another sell-off of BlackRock ETFs. And now something crazy happened here. A Swiss initiative to include Bitcoin in the Constitution has made it to the review phase in the Federal Gazette, which is the official publication for legal texts and government decisions. So it could really be that soon, or it might take some time since they still need to gather all the signatures, but it could be that Switzerland will start focusing more on Bitcoin. If this popular initiative goes through positively with signatures, citizens could propose an amendment to the Constitution. They have until June 30th for that, 2026. Specifically, the National Bank is supposed to hold Bitcoin as a reserve alongside gold. I also spoke about it with Samuel Kuhlman, one of the leaders of this initiative. Basically, what's happening is that right now the Constitution states that the Swiss National Bank is allowed to hold gold, and it's supposed to be amended to allow the Swiss National Bank to hold both gold and Bitcoin. So it's really just about adding 2 words, and that would be huge because Switzerland is a showcase country for many people. The central bank policy in Switzerland works relatively well compared to other central banks. So 2 words are being added here, and that would be really brutal because Switzerland is also a model country for many people. The central bank policy in Switzerland works relatively well compared to other central banks. And Switzerland is really predestined to do something like this because they stand for free markets, maybe less regulation, a bit more openness, and more decentralization, like, for example, the EU or something like that. Even though Switzerland has its share of problems, some things are still running better here, and the Swiss franc is probably the most stable or one of the most stable fiat currencies out there. That's because the Swiss National Bank doesn't mess around with the newly printed money. They actually buy Apple stocks, big tech stocks, valuable assets. Other central banks just throw money around without a second thought. They're basically just financing the state, and the government just keeps pumping out money. It works a bit differently in Switzerland, and that's why it really positions Switzerland to focus on Bitcoin. That's something to keep an eye on. It's simply, let's say, state financing, and the state then throws out endless amounts of money. Things are a little different in Switzerland, and therefore we will have to keep an eye on who is really predestined to invest in Bitcoin in Switzerland. As I said, that doesn't mean that Switzerland will buy Bitcoin tomorrow, but rather that the votes have to be collected first, and then, I would say, everything has to go through a few bodies again. I'm not exactly sure how the bureaucracy works, but let's just say the wheels are in motion, and it's good that at least there's some debate and discussion happening about it. If this goes through positively, they need to find the right people first, but if it does go through, then Switzerland could actually end up buying Bitcoin. And what's also really very interesting and fascinating in this context is the recent new report from Franklin Templeton. They say that this approximately $1.5 trillion asset manager expects several nations to potentially add strategically noteworthy Bitcoin reserves in the near future, in 2025. And now people are already speculating in the comments about which countries might be in the running: Argentina, the USA, Russia, China. Feel free to drop your bets in the comments below about which countries you think will buy Bitcoin in 2025. I really believe that next year, at least one major country will definitely jump on the Bitcoin bandwagon. And that's the question: who will really be the first mover here? Is it going to be the USA, or are there other countries? We've also heard a few voices from people saying that no, the USA isn't going to adopt a Bitcoin reserve strategy. And if they do, it will only be in a diluted form. A lot of people are going to be disappointed here. We'll see. I'm pretty open about it. Go with the flow. Share your thoughts in the comments about how you see things. And then we actually have a major warning from Trump about a Great Depression. Many articles and people online say Trump warned again. He said this previously. He used the 1929 framing in his campaign, suggesting this is coming. We should be skeptical as it creates fear. It's like he's saying, support me or face a Great Depression. One must also be honest and say that he has said it before. He used it again and again during the election campaign, the 1929 framing, that something like this is coming our way, and one must be skeptical about that because it is also creating fear in people. Here, it's basically saying, hey, if you don't support me, we're going to end up in a Great Depression. You absolutely have to vote for me, you have to back me up. Only I can save you from a Great Depression, or something like that. It's like projecting an enemy, or let's say creating a problem and then positioning oneself as the big solution. You know, the USA has a ton of problems, and things aren't looking good. A lot of people are predicting a recession, but whether we actually need to declare a recession, I'm not sure. But it seems like Donald Trump is trying to stir up panic among people, saying, hey, watch out. We're sliding into something really, really bad here. I mean, at a certain point, he's got a point because we have multiple bubbles right now. It's not just the stock market bubble. We've got the real estate bubble, the bond bubble, and various inflated markets because money has been so inflated and messed up over the years that asset bubbles are forming. And these asset bubbles have to burst at some point. If that happens suddenly, it might not just be one asset class, for example. If we have a crisis not just in the real estate market, but also in the bond market, the stock market, and various other markets all at the same time, then we could be looking at a 1929 scenario coming our way. You hear that a lot, but it's really tough to gauge how it will all play out in the end, whether we'll have a 1929 scenario or if it'll be a milder version of that. I mean, we could always rely on central banks to smooth things over again with money printing and all that jazz. But at some point, it's pretty clear that the system has to come to an end. I mean, the fiat money system isn't going to keep going forever. It's going to end, let's say, phenomenally with a crash, a depression, hyperinflation, a currency reset, or whatever, or maybe even a war. We don't really know how it's going to play out, but it's pretty safe to say it won't end well. Mathematically and statistically, it's 100% certain that it won't end well, at least when you look at history. And then we also had some really positive remarks from Kevin O'Reilly. Some of you might know him from Shark Tank, and he's super bullish on Bitcoin. How do you think Bitcoin will do next year?
Well, it's already done that. I mean, obviously, what this is really about is getting some clarity on regulation. Because what allows Bitcoin to move forward is that it becomes a standard financial asset that institutions and sovereign wealth funds can actually invest in. There's been a lot of confusion about it with all the legal battles going on. Gensler came in through the SEC, and there was some confusion, and the US wasn't really leading in this technology. And so with Trump putting a bit more focus on pushing forward regulations that people can actually understand, not just for Bitcoin, but for digital payment systems like a USD stablecoin, something that can be used for transactions around the globe. Both of these ideas are advancing their way through Congress, and people now think for the first time they have a chance of passing. Bitcoin and digital payments look promising under Trump. Many investors, including me, find this asset class interesting for investment. He reiterates the Gary Gensler situation, former SEC chief, caused confusion, but now Trump is pro-Bitcoin and clearer.
So he's saying again that the whole Gary Gensler situation, where he was the former SEC chief, caused a lot of confusion, and now the new Trump administration is definitely more pro-Bitcoin and is providing more clarity. There was a lot of confusion. He also says that the USA was not a leader here, and only now, with the new SEC chief and the new Trump administration, will it take the lead worldwide when it comes to Bitcoin and crypto. To be honest, he's talking about the entire crypto market, including stablecoins and other things, meaning it's not just Bitcoin that's going to benefit, but also stablecoins and other stuff. He's making it clear, hey, I'm bullish on Bitcoin because the chances of Bitcoin going up are way higher or much more likely than the chances of Bitcoin dropping, or having a rough 2025 for that matter. So he's definitely expecting a really good year ahead and is saying that it's becoming increasingly worthwhile to invest in Bitcoin, or that Bitcoin has a rough 2025. So he's clearly expecting a really good year ahead and is saying that it's becoming increasingly worthwhile to invest in Bitcoin. Here, if you want to buy Bitcoin, I'll give you a link to Bitcoin below. Here, you can easily buy Bitcoin whether you're a beginner or more advanced. There are savings plans, auto wallet transfers, and a lot of options. Plus, you can get up to 20% off the fees when buying Bitcoin with the code BitcoinHotel. So it's an absolute recommendation, and that's ultimately the bullish case that most people assume. So I also assume that we will see another massive Bitcoin year in 2025. Whether we will see a massive Bitcoin rally throughout the whole year, or whether we will top it off at some point in the first half of the year, or maybe the third quarter of the year, or the end of 2025, and then really go into a bear market remains to be seen. In 2021, it's definitely likely that ETF inflows will continue, new institutional players will come in, new nation states will join, and new companies will get involved. Adoption is definitely going to move forward, and there's still about a 20, 30, or even 40% chance that we could see some really explosive moments, like, for example, the US announces, hey, we have, for example, to accumulate 1 million Bitcoin per year or E.G. Russia says, we've been mining Bitcoin, and a massive FOMO breaks out with China announcing, we've been accumulating Bitcoin for a China, hey yo, we've been accumulating Bitcoin for a really long time, and we're announcing it now, and we also plan to accumulate even more Bitcoin each year. So I can definitely see those kinds of shock moments happening. They're not exactly black swan events, but I can totally imagine that one or two of them could come up. To be fair, Edward Snowden's prediction didn't hold up because he said there would be a massive announcement this year revealing that he had bought a ton of Bitcoin. This news definitely didn't happen. So Edward Snowden announced that there would definitely be a big leak, something really huge, but that leak never happened. But there have always been stories, like for example, that the United Arab Emirates bought Bitcoin. That was the story from CZ, who ultimately leaked that the UAE had already bought a whole lot of Bitcoin. And I'm pretty sure that stuff like that is definitely happening behind the scenes. It was said that the United Arab Emirates had bought Bitcoin. That was the story of CZ, who ultimately leaked it here, that the United Arab Emirates had already bought a lot of Bitcoin. And I'm also relatively sure that something like this is definitely happening in the background. I can't imagine that the big nations, who also have top advisory teams here, don't understand what's going on. And above all, regions that have a lot of money and that also need to discover new business areas here, such as all the Middle Eastern countries and so on, they're definitely keen on Bitcoin, at least if you ask me. And there will definitely be events that we aren't even aware of yet, like something happening with an exchange, or some unpredictable event, which is something we see every year. Every year, we always had one or two events that nobody really saw coming. Then a pandemic broke out, and suddenly there was an economic crash. For example, the interest rates didn't drop, but rather went up. That would be a similar scenario. Everyone assumes that we're entering a low interest rate cycle. But what if the central banks suddenly realize, hey, we don't have inflation under control, we need to raise interest rates again? That could trigger a depression or something like that. So those are also dangerous things that could be coming our way in 2021. You can just sit back and relax. Consider Bitcoin's fundamentals, decentralized, limited to 21 million coins. You can relax. Bitcoin might crash by 70% or 50%, but stressing over news isn't good for your well-being. Because if you simply look at the fundamentals of Bitcoin, that we have a decentralized system limited to 21 million. Let's say the coins here, that it is no longer vulnerable, that it is not corruptible, that it cannot be banned, then you can actually sit back and relax. And yeah, Bitcoin could crash by 70% or even 50%, and if you let the news drive you crazy, that's not good for your well-being or anything like that. So keep an eye on it, watch it, feel free to check out my videos, and I'd love it if you subscribed. It's all pretty interesting to follow, but don't let it drive you crazy. Always remember that the fundamentals of Bitcoin are the same now as they were 5 years ago, 10 years ago, or even 15 years ago, and they'll still be the same in 20, 30, or 40 years. Sure, there will be some small changes, but that's what you really need to focus on. Always remember that the fundamentals of Bitcoin are the same now as they were 5 years ago, 10 years ago, or even 15 years ago, and they'll still be the same in 20, 30, or 40 years. Sure, there will be some small changes, but in the end, that's what you need to focus on. That might also be a challenge to take on for 2025. Focus more on the signal and less on the noise, even though it's always nice when things go up and down and so on. And like I said, I keep an eye on all of it too, but you shouldn't let it drive you crazy. I sincerely wish you all a great start to 2025 and a smooth transition into the new year. 2025 is going to be a really wild year. It's definitely going to be a really great year, but it could also be a volatile year for Bitcoin. I want to give a huge thank you to everyone who's subscribed, who supports the channel, who has bought something from the online shop, who has attended events, and who writes comments regularly. So a really, really big thank you. Also, here's some important information. We have our online shop, and there are the Bitcoin hodlers that a lot of people have pre-ordered. They're actually stuck in customs right now. So it's also really important to note that the Bitcoin hodlers will be shipped in 2025. They were actually supposed to be shipped by Christmas, but unfortunately, they're stuck in customs. There's really nothing we can do about it. We're really stuck here. They will definitely be shipped out next year, but we're going to get them out as quickly as possible, and then you'll get your Bitcoin hodlers. After that, we'll also offer the hodlers again in the online store, since they're currently taken down. Let me know in the comments below if you're ready for 2025. What are your goals? What are your resolutions? I don't really think much of all these resolutions and goals. I just say, make the best of every moment and don't plan too much for the future. Just be present in the here and now, and make the most out of each moment, and then your life will be amazing anyway. See you later. Peace out, Usend.